Okay, we're live. It's Monday. It's the first Monday, the first show of our new year. We are so happy. We love doing what we do. Think Tech forever. Imua Think Tech. Imua Hawaii. Imua Marco Mangelsdorf. Imua Mina Morita. Everybody, Happy New Year, you guys.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you so much, Jay. I can't think of a better way to rock in the new energy year with two of my favorite energy people, you and Mina.
Yeah, let's be clear about this. We have a great title. It was Marco's idea. Energy rocks in the new year. And how do you say that in Japanese, Mina?
Akemashite omedetou gozaimasu.
All right.
Both of you and our audience.
And I'm going to give it in Mandarin, although it's a little early for the Chinese New Year. Xin Yin Kuai La. That's the modern way in China of saying Happy New Year. You have
and
a
don't
contribution.
Forget Hawaiian, Ha'oli Makahiki.
Okay, thanks. And how do they say it on the Big Island, actually, Marco?
How's it?
They say that for everything. If I hadn't mentioned, Mina joins us from Kauai, and Marco joins us from the Big Island. That's an international hookup. So, my first topic I would like to discuss is running for power, which is an unintended pun because we have found out that Mina is running for power. Tell us about your decision. What are you doing and why?
Okay, so I made the decision to run for the Kauai Island Electric Cooperative Board of Directors. So that election is coming up. The nomination committee met in December, and I was one of the nominees one out of five, and it's for 3 positions. And apparently they didn't get any petitions filed. Candidacy petition. So it's official. I'm going to be on the ballot. And I guess the ballots get mailed out in February, mid-February. And the election, the ballots are counted on March 12th, and the results will be announced on March 12th.
Okay. I remember Steve Levinson, former justice of the state Supreme Court. He said, once you get public service, in your life, you can't hardly get rid of it. It sounds like you want to go back for more, Mina, eh?
Well, I don't think I'll run for any kind of elected position politically. Those days are over, but I'm pretty excited about this because, KIUC is at the forefront.
Uh-huh.
And as a small, pretty nimble, progressive cooperative, I mean, they are the leaders in developing solutions to address our challenges. And, as Marco can attest, this is for the community. All of the benefits go back to the community, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. Let me take a moment and just say to everybody, vote for Mina Morita. If you live in Kauai, vote for Mina Morita. She is great, and we need her because she is experienced and committed to energy, and also because she's going to learn a lot on KIUC board, and she's going to share that with us here on Think Tech. That's my real reason.
So it's really a coincidence, this morning, I've been working on this morning on my candidacy statement and my bio, so, it can go into the official brochure. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Good. Well, you want to take a minute and say anything to the people? Sort of an early statement of your, your position and so forth?
Well, I think, my position hasn't changed much since I was a regulator, that we need an electric system that benefits everybody, not just those that can afford it. The costs have to be equitable to maintain this public infrastructure. So that's my that's my main concern, that first of all, people understand the enormity of this transformation and their role in it, and that everyone benefits from clean energy policies, that we integrate as much cost-effective renewables as possible, that we maintain a reliable and affordable system as we move forward. So, those are the kinds of, at least my objectives for a successful utility.
Okay, well, I'm so happy you're running. I speak for Marco and me. We're on your team. We want you to win. In fact, we're thinking about relocating to Kauai in February so we can cast our ballots, Mina.
Yes, and you must be a cooperative member to cast the ballot.
Now let's shift to you, Marco. You've been in the news too. NextEra wrote you up in Civil Beat, or at least it was written up in Civil Beat that NextEra agrees, or rather disagrees, with your analysis on HIEC. So what's all that about?
Well, what you're referring to is there was a piece that came out in Civil Beat earlier today written by Eric Pape, one of the two energy writers there at Civil Beat, and he essentially focuses on the co-op that we put together here on the Big Island, the Hawaii Island Energy Cooperative. There was also some reference to what KIUC has been doing, since they are the only de facto operating co-op, energy co-op here in the state of Hawaii. And the response from Rob Gould at NextEra, who's their VP for communications, was essentially, to quote him verbatim, he says, we can't speak to what a co-op would mean for a specific community in Hawaii. And then after that caveat, he goes on to essentially challenge the analysis that we've put forth, showing that the co-op will be able to do it cheaper than an investor-owned utility for a number of reasons, not least of which is lower cost of capital. So it's kind of interesting that he prefaces his diss, essentially, of what we put forward by saying, well, we really don't know what a co-op would mean for any specific community in Hawaii, such as the Big Island. Then he goes on to challenge the notion that co-ops are better from a cost perspective or any other perspective than an investor-owned utility. So, if you look at the responses by a number of NextEra personnel who testified over 12 days during the first round of evidentiary hearings in December in Honolulu, the pretty common response was that they don't know much. They don't know much in terms of the circumstances of the individual islands here. Or at least if they do, they're choosing not to share that because they were pressed by our attorneys, they were pressed by other attorneys, they were pressed by some of the commission members themselves, as far as just how much in depth and detail do you folks understand about how we do business out here and about specific conditions for the different utility companies. And their responses were not all that strong in terms of showing an in-depth knowledge of the specifics of this island's grid, or Maui, or Molokai, Lanai, or even Oahu. So I think it's just kind of part and parcel of their overall strategy to challenge the notion of co-ops being more better here, but not really getting into the weeds of why or why not co-ops would make sense for this island or for any of the other islands in particular.
Well, Marco, and I want to ask Mina about this too. Here we are, and that application came up in, December of 2014. And the word is that sometime around the middle of 2016, it'll be decided. So I guess you can say we're going into the seventh inning on this, and we're, 6 months away from actual decision. How's it going? How does it feel? Where are we? Marco, you're first.
Well, I think we're still in kind of uncharted territory, Jay, in the sense of the days before the hearing started, which was November 30th, the applicants, or NextEra, came to essentially a settlement with the U.S. Department of Defense to allow Department of Defense to supposedly get their their conditions or the concerns met, and for DOD to essentially drop out of the docket. And Chairman Iwase essentially, I think, took a little bit of umbrage at that, as saying that this was an 11th hour development, and we're not sure how to treat this. And what I mean by that is, at this point, if there are new so-called commitments on top of the 85 so-called commitments that have already been proposed by NextEra, are those commitments essentially opening the door again for discovery, for additional information requests, and for responses to information requests, and rebuttals to this, and rebuttals to that? So,
why do you're assuming that that there is a quote settlement between the Department of Defense and NextEra, but if there is a settlement, you're also assuming that promises have been made, commitments have been made, which are not not part of the public record. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think we have to look at this. You know, there might be a commitment between NextEra as the parent company of Pico and a customer, which is very different from a commitment between the parent company and the regulator.
So it's what I hear you saying, Mina, is it's okay. They can do that in order to try to get the Department of Defense on their side.
Yeah, I mean, because that's, I mean, to me, it's from a business to their customer, and as long as it's, you know, I guess not discriminatory or anything like that, and then if there are special tariffs or anything like that, then it would go to the regulator to be approved. So I think, you know, we should, there's two kinds of conditions that we're talking about. And, you know, I think the kinds of conditions that the chair was talking about was between the regulator and NextEra.
Yeah, and that is all public record. There's no surprises in there. Well, Mina, how do you?
If I could,
go ahead.
Let me, if I could pose a question to Mina, which is that on the last day of the hearings, on the 16th of December, Randy Iwase closed things out by questioning Maury Dewhurst, CFO, and most senior person there from NextEra, and Maury Dewhurst was on the stand for close to 2 days, and he essentially, and I was in the room at the time, it was a rather riveting exchange, I thought, where he took Dewhurst and his company to task for not providing more of a commitment to the pensioners, to the kupuna of Hawaiian Electric companies. So conceivably, if NextEra went back and discussed, well, we see this as a weakness, and it looks like the chair sees this as an important issue, and they came back with a public commitment to take better care of the kupuna, of the pensioners, of the retirees, then would that be something which would be subject to discovery and to discussion and questions by the other interveners?
Mina?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Okay.
I mean, I think all of that. I mean, there's an indication there, and you know, they might be looking for a commitment, but those kinds of commitments usually aren't clarified until there's a rate case. So,
I mean, I guess it raises the question about, let's assume for a minute that they did cut a deal, or rather that they came up with, that NextEra came up with a better package for the kupuna. As an ordinary citizen, I'm okay with that. That's what they want to do. They could do it anyway, you know, going in later. They could do it for any number of reasons. Why is it necessary to have discovery about something which is relatively internal to take care of the kupuna? Why do we need to have extended proceedings over that?
yeah, and there's a careful balancing act, and that's why it's in the rate case, because you know, how much of those expenses are going to be pushed on the current ratepayers.
Right, and that would be up to the PUC, wouldn't it? And they would
Yeah.
decide whether it was offered now or later, whether it was offered by NextEra or, for that matter, Hawaiian Electric.
Yeah, I mean, how much is it going to be shareholder expense? How much is going to be ratepayer expense? I mean, so it's hard to find, that such a specific condition would hold up.
Yeah. But this is, it kind of sounds like a case within a case. What I mean is, so we're trying to decide whether to approve or disapprove the deal, and then we wind up having a proceeding about, it really is a proceeding about what might happen in the future, about the specific terms proposed. It sounds like it's, do I really care about this? Marco, do I really care about this?
Well, let me kind of tell you one of my takeaways, now that we're at the beginning of January and this merger has been on the table for 13 months now, 13 months to the day, if I'm not mistaken, since December 3rd or 4th, 2014, when it was announced, is that the field is being stretched out, essentially, the playing field, or the time on the clock, because the evidentiary hearings were not wrapped up in 12 days of hearings. They are tentatively rescheduled, although we have yet to receive anything formal from the Commission on this, tentatively rescheduled for the 1st of February to the 10th. So another 7-8 days worth of hearings. And that pushes things further out in terms of an ultimate decision, I think, because there will be, after the end of evidentiary hearings, there will be essentially the filings from the parties, essentially kind of a closing brief, a post-hearing brief, which is kind of their summation to the jury, so to speak, in terms of where they stand or sit or swing on the issue. And then that will take us into sometime in March, most likely, with the deadline being sometime in March. And then, assuming something else doesn't come up that stretches it out further, then at that point, I guess it goes to the jury. And maybe Mina can add to that as well. The jury, again, being the three commissioners of Randy Iwase, Lorena Kiba, and Mike Champley. And, Chair Iwase has made clear that he's going to proceed, or they're going to proceed on their own timetable as far as not feeling hurried by any of the parties. So, whether we're going to have a decision by June 3rd, remains to be seen. But I think a case can be made that based on the hearings not being concluded last month, that a June 3rd decision on the part of the Commission is probably more unlikely now at this point, and it's more likely that it's going to stretch beyond that. That's at least kind of where I see things.
Mina, would you comment on that?
No, I'm not going to comment on timetable. I can see that the Commission wants a total and complete record, to withstand any kind of appeal on its decision. And, I think that's the main focus. So
I understand. So, and an appeal would be, would an appeal be on the substance of their decision, or would it be on, the procedure? Would it be on something like this does not suit the public interest, or that they didn't follow Rule SJ 67 somewhere deep in the Commission's rules?
Well, the opening for any kind of appeal is a procedural error.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, they're being extra cautious in, in how it's conducting the proceeding, making sure that it's, dotting its I's, crossing its T's, to not allow for any kind of substantive discussion on the outcome of the decision.
What about the opinion itself? I know the PUC sometimes makes long decisions, but would it be possible for the chair, Randy Iwase, to get up one day and say, okay, we considered all the facts and circumstances, we looked at everything we thought we had to look at, it's granted, period. Or it's denied, period. Is any chance that would happen?
No, not at this point, especially when they they already kind of outlined a schedule. So no, I don't think, and especially given his experience in administrative law and his background in that, I don't think that's going to happen.
We're going to get an opinion, maybe a lengthy opinion, okay. All right, well, let's move on. In fact, let's take a break and move on. We have a number of issues to talk about, unrelated. Well, everything is related to the PUC, but unrelated to the status of the merger approval. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back, and then we'll get to those things.
Hi, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for watching Think Tech Hawaii. One of the things that we try to do here is promote civic engagement. How do we do that? We put on shows weekdays from 12 to 5 p.m. We let people in our world on Facebook and all the social media. Today, I'd like to talk to you about another way that you can engage us here at Think Tech Hawaii and help us promote civic engagement here in Hawaii. What you do is you get on Twitter, you follow us at ThinkTechHI, and during the day, between weekdays between 12 and 5 p.m., you can interact with each of our live shows. What does that mean? You can send us questions, comments, thoughts, experiences, anything. All you have to do is mention us on Twitter. We'll see it here in the studio, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. This is a big thing for us. We want to hear from you. The conversation doesn't start here when our show ends. It ends when everybody gets their say. Join us weekdays, 12 to 5 p.m. on thinktechhawaii.com. Join in the conversations live with Twitter, at ThinkTechHI. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. See you soon.
Okay, we're back. We're live, and we have Mina Morita and Marco Mangelsdorf, MMMM, who? And me. In our first energy show of the year, which we're calling Energy Rocks in the New Year. Great to have you guys on board. So our next topic to talk about here is energy subsidies and actions contemplated or discussed or possible in the 2016 legislature. Who wants to go first? Marco, you go first.
Okay. Well, I got to thinking not too long ago. Actually, I've given this a fair amount of thought over the past years in terms of essentially just how level of a playing field do we have, not only on the state in the U.S., but also on a kind of global macro level. How much of an energy playing field is there, or how much of a level energy playing field is there? And the fact of the matter is that we don't have a level playing field, and most likely we never will, because it's perhaps overly simplistic, but typically the wealthy and powerful members of society, whether they're individuals or whether they're corporations, typically have more power and influence and sway in determining the rules of the game, including tax policy and the various subsidies. So I did some digging and found a very interesting table, which hopefully you'll be able to get on the screen there at some point, which looks at federal energy subsidies over a rather long period from 1950 to 2010, so 60 years worth of subsidies. And it includes oil, natural gas, coal, hydro, nuclear, renewables, and geothermal. And over that 60-year period, somewhere around 837 billion with a B, 837, were spent essentially or provided in some form or another by the federal government for different energy sources, either through tax policy, regulation, research and development, supporting market activity, direct disbursements, and so forth. And not surprisingly, and to kind of take this home a little bit, is what are we doing here in this state in terms of subsidies to promote various energy sources? And if you look at the federal macro picture over 60 years, out of the $837 billion, about 79% of it, 79% went to the what are called conventional energy sources of oil, natural gas, coal, and nuclear. So that left the balance of 21% for hydro, which is typically large-scale hydro, renewables, and geothermal, with geothermal being the smallest and renewables being after hydro. So it's interesting that we as a society, whether it's at the congressional level in Washington or whether it's our own legislature, takes a look at the piggy bank essentially of the public trough of general expenditures, both money coming in and money going out in terms of tax credits, and they make a decision based on different societal values, whether this type of energy source versus that type of energy source is worthy of subsidies. And clearly in our state, going back to at least 40 years now, with the beginning of a solar tax credit for solar water heating in 1976 when I graduated from high school, at the risk of dating myself, that for decades there has been the decision made by successive legislatures and successive governors to spend state money, to spend taxpayer money on renewable energy sources. Why? Because we see it as a good thing. Why? Because we want to reduce our dependence on imported fossil fuels and make ourselves more energy independent and lead towards the great so-called clean energy transformation, the buzz phrase. Which
You raise a very interesting point, especially in the days of Citizens United. And we've heard in the Next Era, some of the people who oppose Next Era say that Next Era will be able to buy the legislature, arguably that it has done so in other states, and therefore control this at the legislative level, and the PUC can't do too much about that. And so this is an issue that's not only of interest here in Hawaii, it's a national issue, especially with the super PACs and large capital concentrations, particularly in this case energy companies, who want to create incentives and credits of one kind or another. So Mina, you are the perfect person, to respond to that, because you've been on both sides of it. You've been a legislator for years and years about energy, and then you've been the chair of the PUC. How do we properly determine tax policy, tax incentive policies, without letting it get all political?
You can't, because it is a political decision.
Okay, there you go.
But it all comes back to, first of all, campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
And how you influence decision makers. But I wrote a blog piece about this, about the fear of Next Era taking over the legislature and stuff. And they can only do that if we give them the ability to do that. I mean, the power is in our hand in having a strong regulator and having independent decision makers, legislators, or legislators who are thoughtful. I mean, that comes back to, again, the democratic process, the responsibility of, first of all, people voting and having a good field of candidates to choose from, who are thoughtful and concerned about the public interest rather than special interest. And then again, I mean, we spent over 15 years getting the proper funding for the PUC.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only way that you can adversely affect the regulator is if you don't fund them properly and you take away their authority.
Amen to that. I remember when the Next Era deal first came up, legislature started holding hearings on it, even before the PUC had, gotten ready for its hearings. And I thought, and it's like they were taking that authority away. They were, doing it on their own, in their own way, and that didn't seem right. I think step number one, just as you say, Mina, is to allow the PUC to do its work.
Right. Yeah, and that's been a subject of several post that I've written, and it's really, really critical because, I mean, there are huge economic, technical, social impacts that are being decided in this decision, and it has to be done on facts, not political win. You know, we don't want people putting their finger up in the air and testing the wind and making a decision that way, because our whole economy depends on a well-functioning utility.
Well, of course, you can say, will the players on the field please not try to exercise, a Citizens United kind of control over the legislature and do that on a voluntary basis? That may or may not work. And you can say to the press, will you please, report those things and, demonstrate in your reporting that it's not a great idea to have the utility companies control the legislature on these issues. But I think the big one, which you mentioned, Mina, is the public has got to be informed. The public has got to understand what's going on, and the public has got to vote accordingly.
Yeah, yes. And what's really scary right now is, especially, we really don't have a free press. I mean, with social media now, people go out and seek the opinion or that coincide most likely to their views and cite that, rather than having, in-depth investigation, thoughtful discussion moving forward. So, people have more, with social media, people have more access to confirming, and I put confirming in quotes, their views and seeking the sources that support that.
Yeah. Well, so this takes us to the next question, is what's likely to happen in the legislature? And I'll throw my primary thought in, which I was thinking already last year, is that while the Next Era deal is pending, everything is under that cloud. Because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. It's hard to plan. It's hard to, come up with initiatives, and it's hard to back a position one way or the other when you don't know what the playing field is going to be like only a few months away. So query, Marco, what can happen in the legislature this year? What do you recommend that they focus on?
Well, I think there's going to be some examination of the state renewable energy investment tax credit, which, as I mentioned before, has been around in some form or fashion for 40 years now. And I don't have my ear exactly to the ground as far as what will be introduced in a couple weeks as legislation, but I believe there will be efforts to try to include the use of battery energy storage, and incorporate that into the existing state tax credits, so that people who put in homes and businesses who put in batteries as part of the Brave New World going forward, where we're going to have over time more site storage in terms of batteries behind the meter at individual locations, and also utility scale storage. So I would expect there to be activity as far as trying to loop batteries in, and whether there's going to be any effort to try to start ramping down the state tax credit over time, which right now has no sunset date, which is different than the newly extended federal investment tax credit, which is scheduled to ramp down over time. I don't know if there will be efforts to eventually sunset the state tax credit, but I see, again, energy storage as being one of the main subjects probably going to be dealt with in the energy committees at the legislature this year.
Yeah, Mina, don't you agree that energy storage and a incentivization for energy storage is low-hanging fruit? That no matter what happens at the utility level, we should be incentivizing storage. Don't you agree?
It should be market-based. I don't agree with the tax credits incentivize storage. And my understanding is the current tax credit already includes storage.
So what would you suggest to the legislature this year, Mina? Should they be watchful and wait, or should they take affirmative action on anything to move the needle ahead?
Well, I think, again, they have to take a close look at the existing tax credit. And in my discussions with the tax office, it already includes storage.
Okay.
So new people coming onto the grid, just have to get their entire system packaged correctly, and especially given the new tariffs. Mm-hmm. But to incentivize storage for those people who have already installed PV systems and taken the tax credit is just giving them a double bonus.
Yeah. Okay.
And especially for systems that got paid off pretty quickly. So I just can't see the fairness in going back and subsidizing these customers that have already taken the tax credits to get more subsidization from the same trough.
I love when both you guys are on. We have these wonderful conversations. We are not always together. Sometimes we have two or possibly three views of the matter. So let's go to one last point, because we're going to run out of time, and that is oil and gas. There are lots of things happening in the global market for oil and gas, and the bottom line is that these days it's about $37 a barrel for oil. This has got to be having an effect. First, it reflects the global economy, but it also has an effect on the global economy, and has an effect on what countries and companies might do, and what the public might do for clean energy. So my question to you is, what effect is it having right now? What effect is it having in Hawaii? And what should we assume for the future?
Well, and then let me kind of piggyback on that, and then kind of put Mina on the hot spot if she's willing, which is, I'd be interested in hearing what your hit is, Mina, in the following question. Now that we have oil, which is trading at under $40 a barrel, and who knows, of course, how long it's going to be there. I mean, a few people predicted 12 months ago it would go below 40 and park there for who knows how long. We also have natural gas at also low prices going back to 12, 15 years ago, that we had prices for nat gas that low. To what extent do you believe that the price of conventional fuels out here would somehow be acting as a disincentive or a hindrance to making more progress faster towards the so-called clean energy transformation?
Well, I think we definitely should be using the low cost in ways that will help us accelerate moving to clean energy, and mainly because the subject of climate change is at the forefront right now, and so I don't see us, even though we have low pricing, I don't see us going backwards just because climate change is such an important issue. And then again, I think the other concern in the mix is, you look at what's happening in the Middle East. It's just a keg ready to go off there right now.
Yeah.
So supply disruption. We're still affected by supply disruption, and we shouldn't lose our focus on energy security issues.
But what about the public? The public sees that gas is low. They say, gee, maybe it'll stay low. These are the good old days, back again. I'm not too motivated to, pay taxes or, have it come out of my pocket when gas is cheap, especially in transportation.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, this might be a good time to look at gas taxes and what we can do there to, increase the funds to put towards transportation initiatives. I mean, we've been focused a lot on electricity, but, we don't have any near-term options to deal with our transportation issues.
Yeah.
So, these low prices are also affecting transportation, but maybe right now to seriously look at, how do we use taxation policies to really shore up public transportation.
Yeah, maybe restore the electric vehicle credit. What about that? Yeah.
Because we do need a way to.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost out of time. Marco, why don't you try to wrap up?
Well, we are going to have, I think, a very, very interesting year in energy in 2016. I've been in this business on and off for a very, very long time. And when I think I kind of have a feeling of the lay of the land and what's to be expected, lo and behold, something whops me upside the head. And I think that's likely to happen in the months to come. I mean, as one of my heroes, not really, Don Rumsfeld, opined years ago, there are the known unknowns, and then there are the unknown unknowns. And in this case, is the unknown unknowns, which I think have more of the whop in the head capability. And I'm sure that we're going to have some of those unknowns, and we really do live on the frontier here in more ways than one, in terms of being in the middle of the Pacific, having these long supply lines, and really being on the cutting edge of so many energy issues, from power generation to transportation, and how we can do a better job in weaning ourselves from fossil fuels.
Okay, Mina, why don't you close?
Well, thanks for having us again, Jay, and what a great way to open up the new year. And, we're going to have more exciting conversations coming up with the opening of the legislature and the continuation of the merger docket. And definitely some topics we haven't even touched on, like the court's rejection of the Alliance for Solar Choices lawsuit against the PUC. Lots of topics out there.
Let's try to do that next time. We didn't have time for it this time, but we can do it next time and more. Thank you so much, Mina Morita. Thank you, Marco Mangelsdorf. It's great to have these discussions with you. And let's keep on doing them all through the year for thrills and chills. And Energy rocks in the new year. Thanks, guys.
Thank you both. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.